Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to let our returning guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. We're going to start with Mr. James JE Pittman.
What's up, everybody? You can just call me James, right under JE Pittman. I write the Felix Chance series of darkly cozy urban fantasy. Volume 3 is finished as of last night.
Congrats.
Woo!
Putting it together now for the editor. I also write the Pandora Squad series of military action sci-fi. So go from con man to ass kickers, as the situation warrants. But glad to be here for episode number 500.
And the beard is looking epic, sir.
Well done. Well done. Next, we have the mini personalities of Miss Jana S Brown.
Hi guys, I'm Jana S Brown. I also write under the pen name Jena Rey. That's where all the science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, and other things that are the weird and the wonderful with smoochies go. And then I write under other names. And no, JR is not going to get into it this time, which I always say, and then he does anyway. So I'm also glad to be here. I'm glad that all of the boys let me come and hang out in their club today.
Nick, I want you to know that today I did not tell her she wrote as Chuck Tingle. I did not say it today.
No, never. You didn't
Lord.
say that. Not this time.
All right, next we have
Chuck Tingle.
Next, we have Mr. Jesse James Fain, the outlaw author himself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jesse James Fain, as JR likes to point out, the outlaw author. The branding wrote itself, but yes, that is my real name. I write science fiction, fantasy, mil sci-fi, anything I can squeeze a gunfight, a sword fight, or a fist fight into, because that's what I find entertaining, and that's what I like to do in both real and fantasy life. And yeah, that's me.
All right, next we have Mr. JT Arralle.
Hey,
A real gun.
Hey guys, I'm JT Arralle. I write fantasy, sci-fi, horror, mil sci-fi, urban fantasy, whatever strikes a fancy at the time. And I am definitely glad to be here on episode 500.
All right, next we have Mr. MD Boncher.
You kill me, dog. You just kill me. That's all there is, Handley.
All right, Boncher.
Them's fighting words. I know approximately where you live. You just remember, there is no such thing as close in hand grenades and atomic bombs. I am MD Boncher. I write science fiction and fantasy, preferring the old style pulps and more mixing my horror with my fantasy with the Akinawazi saga. And then for those that like their science fiction snarky and high-flying fun, I have the Tales from the Dream Nebula series, where it's so much fun, it's starting to leak out in small stories around the edges.
All right, and just so you know, Nick, I did check. I am close enough in the Tidewater region to the various military bases that if they do drop that atomic bomb, I am sure to either die or get superhero powers.
Dude, I live close to the Pacific Fleet. Like, I'm toast.
You're both close enough to be supervillains within the week.
I mean,
Or war
although,
if we survive.
do you remember, what was it, the guy that was the trash can guy that was the atomic, nuclear sludge?
He could sniff out weapons. Trash can.
Oh, Toxic Avenger.
The Toxic Avenger.
Yes.
Oh, that guy. Okay.
I remember
Toxic.
Toxic. Trauma films, baby.
Toxic. He had trash cans in the episodes. I remember, but it was.
He had a trash can lid as a shield and a mop.
Yep.
Same.
Should
He
do a
was a
show on the
janitor.
Toxic Avenger. I love it.
Yep. I mean, that was trauma films, man. The horror films for by horror lovers. They also did Class of 1984, and then went on to actually scare the crap out of everybody for real with Slither. So,
Not that you're a fan.
Surf Nazis Must Die.
I think they might have
Yeah.
So-
a feel-good romp if ever there was one.
So Stabby has made us promise to do a few more horror episodes. So it sounds like you just volunteered for some of those.
Nice.
If it's crappy B-grade black and white horror, then I probably am game.
probably already
I've
seen.
got about 100, or I got between 100 and 200 of those.
Nice. All right. Speaking of horror, before we move on to let Michael introduce himself, at some point in time, one of you, dear listeners, mentioned that you were in a horror indie film, that we should interview you and talk to some of the other authors or other actors, and we were game. I don't remember who you are, though, because I have lots of people reaching out. Hey, let's get this episode on the books. And I try to remember and come back to everybody, but like I'm one person with Swiss cheese memory. So if that is you, please hit me up, because the Stabby was very interested to talk about the horror movie. So she was down. So, and Nick is going to say yes because he doesn't want to get stabbed.
Yes.
That's how that rolls. All right. And last, we've got Mr. Michael LaVoice. Can you introduce yourself to your viewers at home?
Yes, I'm Michael LaVoice, author of Galaxy's Most Wanted and the soon-to-be-released Gladius League's Book 1, Any Given Doomsday. That should be coming out in February from Chris Kennedy Publishing. I write science fiction, military sci-fi, and fantasy. So I got a lot of projects in the pipeline right now. So busy. I am going to have to drop out for a minute, though, because I've got a technical issue with this camera, and I need to fix it. So I'll be right back, guys. I promise. Okay. I'll be right back. Sorry.
That is something. All right. So we've already got a man down. Man down. So ironically, this episode will be airing on 2 days after the launch day of our Deadly Flames anthology. So I'm going to have that listed as a sponsor. We do not have a commercial made for that yet, but I will link to it in the show notes, and we'll do a little bit of talking about that at the middle mark, because that's one of Jesse's first published stories. I think it's your second.
Woohoo!
It's coming out.
So
cool.
That's the first Ruin Red Eagle. The second one that'll actually hit a shelf. Everything else is caught up in publisher hell. So I think MD's in that one as well, so he can speak to it as well.
All right, perfect. All right, and with that out of the way, we are going to twist up the religion questions just a little bit, because you've all been guests on the show. We've had multiple themed iterations of that based on the topic, but since today's the 500th episode of the Blasters and Blades, because we had 176 recorded episodes under our sci-fi shenanigan banners. But how did you guys find the podcast? And we're just going to go around robin. So we're going to start with you, JT. How did you find us?
I think I was talking to most everybody on one of the social media platforms first.
Okay.
And got invited.
It's probably regarding your life choices about this point in your life, but hey, we'll take it.
All
right. What about you, James?
Another frequent guest to the show, Lynn Barry. He had been on the show doing his author interviews, and I looked it up and I was like, oh, I know this person, I know that person, I know this person, I know that person, I know this person, and eventually he put up a topic. It was like, hey, who wants to come talk about this? I'm like, me.
Hard to believe it's been a year since then, because you came towards the end of season 3. With us.
Yeah. When you first started doing all the panel shows, I think my first one was like Urban Legends or Fairy Tales or something like that.
So, all right. What about you, MD Boncher?
Let's see. How did I find out about this? I guess I was slumming around on the Three Ravens Discord, and apparently made enough of an ass of myself that you said, hey, this guy might be fun. And you made the tragic mistake, other than declaring a land war in Asia, is to invite me on the podcast.
We also, if you notice, did not invade Russia in the winter. Never made that mistake.
Okay, so the best one out of the 3 tactical blunders in the world: don't invade Russia in winter, don't start a land war in Asia, and don't invite me on a podcast. So 1 for 3, not bad.
I mean, we do what we can, right? I mean, we aim to do a little bit better every day.
Yep. Right, but not only that, you invited me back multiple times. It's all your fault. Self-inflicted wounds are the worst kind.
I mean, but you make me feel sane. So, when you do your shenanigans, I'm like, I'm the normal one.
Ta-da! The gift that keeps on freaking out.
All right, Jana, how did you find us?
I found you off of Three Ravens. So a friend had been interviewed, and then I got yanked onto the Three Ravens server, and then you started filling up the podcast channel with needing stuff. And you were just so needy that I had to pop over and become den mother for this group of Ragamuffins.
All right, we'll take it. We're glad you came. All right, Jesse, how did you find us?
To sadly not have an original answer, I too was slumming around the Three Ravens Discord with nothing better to do in my spare time than join this crazy cast. You were kind enough to put out the open call. It was something I could actually talk about, so I jumped in.
Jesse, you never slum around. You lurk menacingly.
That's probably fair.
I'm sure there were 6 shooters involved because
I've met you.
All right, and LaVoice. Come on, you got to do better than these people. How'd you find it?
I knew you guys before you were Blasters and Blades.
You did.
I did. Back during the old shenanigans days, and so that's how I first found you guys. Was somebody I was working with as a ghost was on the show, and I went and listened to the episode. Can't say who, obviously.
Obviously. I mean, well, you could, but then they'd sue you. It gets ugly.
It gets ugly. Lawyers get involved, and we all know how I feel about those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're thinking about coming on a podcast like this, people, and someone asks you, you have to say something along the lines of like, because you guys were just like the best podcast ever. And then when you gave me the chance to be on here, it was like I won the lottery. It was a dream come true. I'm getting a little emotional and choked up just thinking about it. Like that would have been the perfect answer.
So it sounds like a schoolgirl.
I mean,
I'm not missing your butt, JR. I'm just not.
Lies, and damned lies.
All right.
Statistics, computer models.
All right. So the next question is: do you guys have what was your favorite episode? It didn't have to be one you were on. Just your favorite one out of them all. We'll start with you, JT, and we're gonna keep going round robin.
All right. So this one I was on. It was the post-apocalyptic discussion where we had a bunch of us talking about mistakes that are made by some authors about dealing with the environments and whatnot. Had a lot of fun talking with all the different viewpoints on that. It was great.
Yeah, we've got some offshoot episodes from that one that will come in to season 5,
Nice.
including an episode that between that episode and Katie Cross, it's going to be the intersection of subject matter experts or SMEs and fiction. Because sometimes there's the right way to do things, but then there's the fun way for fiction, and they're not always the perfect circle. Like sometimes the overlap is, rule of cool just, yeets you off to the side a little bit. So it's fun to consider. And I'll give you a perfect example. In fantasy, everybody has a sword when realistically, probably most people would have staffs or sticks with sharp pointy ends. But swords are cool and iconic, so of course everyone has a sword. All right, James.
Well, to that point, JR, a stick can be a sword if you imagine hard enough.
This is absolutely true. I was a young boy once.
Probably my favorite episode. You know what I'm probably gonna say. Any guess?
Is it the Gundam episode?
Ding, 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 ding.
Ta-da!
Gundam episode or any of the giant stompy robot ones.
I was about to say, was that the giant stompy robots in general, or was there a particular?
No, there was a specific Gundam.
I did a
one.
specific.
Oh
Gundam.
crap! I gotta go find that. I missed it. Okay.
So we're actually going to be doing another Gundam one where we review one of the series. There's one of the shorter ones, so it's a good. Heather Hollow recommended it, and I can't remember. I wrote it down, but it was one of the ones that was the.
MS Team.
Yeah, I think so. I actually expected, because you absolutely love your own series so much, and that's a good thing. I thought you were going to say your interview where we talked about Felix Chance.
I mean, that's just the self-promotion whore in me, but yeah. But I had the most fun.
Well, now that you mentioned it.
My models. Yeah, I have my banner all the time, but I actually broke out the Gundam models for that show.
You did. And you staged them around like, you zoomed in on them. It was great.
Yeah.
All right.
All of Gundam Wing. Ready to go.
LaVoice, favorite episode. Didn't have to be one you were on.
No, I was on it, but it's still my favorite. It's the G.I. Joe episode. That was so much fun.
Okay. Which one?
The one we were just generally covering the comics.
Okay.
And we talked about the animated series versus the comics a little bit. And it was just, we had guys there that actually worked on the role-playing game.
Oh yeah.
So that was a heck of a lot of fun, man. There, you don't talk about a friggin' treasure trove of GI Joe knowledge. Those guys knew everything. It was great. And we all agreed that the best episode or issue of GI Joe was the wordless issue number 21. That was cool.
All right. And then we have the one, the only MD Boncher.
Boncher.
Trade you in for a puppy, and it don't have to be cute either. Favorite episode? Well, it's not one I was in, but it's near and dear to my heart so quickly, and that's the one where you brought Bambo on. Let's face it, I'm biased for the missus. And I got to see Red One after that. Yeah. Oh, look, you should talk too. I met your missus. Yeah, exactly, as you should. So yeah, that's probably been my favorite one so far because I sit there and giggle at it.
You know, we both won the lottery, so what are you gonna do?
I married up.
That is just right answer. I don't think her episode is aired yet.
Yes, it has. You aired it on Christmas Day.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Okay.
Yep.
So we did the Elf interview, I think. Yeah.
Yes. I did Elf. She did Red One, and I saw Red One, and I'm like, this movie was a lot better. I kind of regret not seeing it with her earlier.
I enjoyed Red One. That was fun.
I like it too.
I got to see that movie, and I also got to see for the first time ever The Rocketeer over New Year's. So, believe it or not, I've gone this far without ever seeing The Rocketeer.
Oh my god!
And I was like,
I don't know. Is he allowed to be here anymore?
I saw it. Oh, you can't. No backseat.
He at least watched it. He at least watched it.
All right.
He fixed it.
Right, Rocketeer IP just went on the list for future episodes.
Oh yeah,
barely.
All right.
I'm gonna wear the jacket and the helmet.
Nice. So it's one of those things where when you talk to your kids and you realize they don't know what you're talking about, and you're like, "I failed you as a parent." Although the funny experience was I got the privilege of introducing the kiddos to Goonies, and they're like, where are all the parents? I'm like, they're not. Isn't it great?
It's the 80s, dude. There weren't none.
We're gonna have to go on a Gen X. We're gonna have to go on a Gen X episode sometime.
That would go for a very, very long time. There's no way we can keep that
you'd have to do a whole series.
It's a two-part.
Well, we would have to find a way to tie it to speculative fiction, but I'm definitely game.
Dude, there was some of the.
That's easy, JR. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The best speaking came from Gen X.
Raising your kids right, though, and making sure they know about the IPs that matter. If my kids
that's
come
a
up blank
perfect episode. The IPs that matter.
Right. I force them to watch everything from The Last Starfighter all the way up to Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. So, yeah.
Which is streaming free right now on Tubi.
All right. So,
yeah, Emmett Otter. It might be gone now, but.
Jana, what was your favorite episode?
See, that's hard because we've done so many really, really cool ones. If I had to choose right off the top of my head, it's probably a toss-up between the King Arthur one, because King Arthur is my jam, and Indiana Jones. Because Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was an awesome movie, and talking about it with a bunch of other people who liked it as much as I did, there's just no bad there. So those are probably right up there in my top two, but it's a crowded list, man.
Absolutely. All right, Jesse, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
Favorite that's aired is our Dog Soldiers episode. The movie in itself, I think, is really underrated. On top of that, some of the guests on that one were really cool. My favorite episode that we've done that hasn't aired yet is definitely Sword and Sorcery. I don't think that one's actually published yet, but whatever it.
No, that was.
Yeah, that'll be it.
All right, Nick, because you get to answer too.
Oh, no.
Favorite episode that we've done.
I didn't get asked the last two questions. So.
No, the last one was how you found us, but we did a whole episode on episode 1 about how we got together. So I don't really think.
I didn't find you. You found me, like the CIA.
Absolutely. And then Stabby got her
You're
nickname because she tried to cut you when we first met.
Because
She
you
showed
made him
up
late
with
for
the
dinner,
knife.
though.
Well, I mean, it
Yeah,
was supposed to be okay. So everybody's met
Technically, your
authors.
fault.
Everybody's met authors that are a lot of fun to talk to. Like their books are awesome. You put them in front of an interview, and it's like watching grass grow or paint dry. And we had to make sure our co-host wasn't one of those people. So it was just a little test run through Facebook Messenger. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. It was like a 3-hour tour that ran long. So it's really not my fault. He was just too interesting to talk to.
And then Stabby comes in and threatens him with, bloodletting and becomes the instant chaos coordinator. She didn't even
I'm into
finish
that.
auditioning.
So I have recently started taking the kiddo to church because he wanted to go. And actually one of the people apparently that we met came up to me this past Sunday to tell me they do listen to the podcast. And they had to explain to me, it was weird, but they had to explain to me that Stabby was right because Italian meals are difficult to make and difficult to time perfectly. And if you make that get cold, you just deserve the death penalty. Yeah. She did mention something about wood chippers, but I had to cut it off because I'm like, lady, we're at church. Calm down.
You're in the house of the Lord, lady. Come on.
Right? So Nick, other than
say grace beforehand. So you say grace before you send them on to meet Jesus. Gotcha.
In the South, we do have that expression. He just needed killing.
Bless your pea-picking little heart.
Yep. Nick, what was your favorite episode of all the ones we've done?
Oh man, I really enjoyed all the retro reviews we did last season. Those were fun. And some of the movies I hadn't seen either. I hadn't seen them at all, or I hadn't seen them in a very long time. It was nice to revisit those and look at them through a fresh perspective, a fresh new set of eyes, older eyes, so not new eyes. But I just thought that was fun. And the multiple panels, those were always a gas. So
they say you don't have any favorite children. And since I actually do all of the booking, I pick all of the topics. I do like all of them, or we wouldn't do them. Having said that, I really enjoyed the retro review we did for Forbidden Planet because like I had seen it and then we were rewatching it and watching, because Nick and I talk offline, like when we're not recording, watching his kid get to enjoy seeing this movie through kids' eyes was kind of fun because we were getting the minute updates. The blow-by-blows from his family as they were watching. It was kind of fun. My kid was boring; he just fell asleep. But Nick's son was very enthralled by Robbie the robot. So and every guy here, Robbie the robot was just like speed printing out all that bourbon. I just 63.
Yes.
I need
gallons Robbie. And gallons of bourbon.
Yeah. If I was given a genie lamp and had 3 wishes, I'm asking for 3 Robbies. Each producing a different type of grain alcohol.
Wait, what's to say that Robbie can't produce more than one? I mean, there's no indication that was his limit.
No, I'm trying to speed up the process.
Oh, you're trying to streamline the production. I got you.
Yeah, I'm taking the Henry Ford approach to it, assembly line stuff.
As long as no bathtubs are involved, that's how you lose kidneys.
And I already lost one, so it's a joke. I'm kidding.
I mean, you didn't need it anyway, so.
I was
all right.
using it.
It's dry January for me, so it's gonna be a rough month, y'all.
All right, so this is a fun one. If you could on the panel, if we could have any dream guest that you would want to be on this panel to chat with, who would it be? And we're going to start with you, JT. If you could be on a panel of anybody in the world to have this conversation where we nerd out over spec fic.
Absolutely easy to answer. Karen Travis of the stories for the Gears of War games, as well as 5 of the novels. She's also written some Star Wars novels, and she's written a bunch of others.
She wrote Republic Commando. She wrote the Republic Commando novels.
Yeah. What's great about I used to walk through this Star Wars section at one of the bookstores that we had in the town I lived in Idaho, and you would see all the Star Wars novels. You're going by, and they're like, the spines are like this thick, and then you get to Karen Travis's.
Yeah.
Her books are like 2 or 3 times the size of others, and the writing is just superb.
Nice. All right. What about you, James?
Jim Butcher, hands down. Dresden Files was my gateway into urban fantasy, and that's what, I've always read like high fantasy and good sci-fi, but urban fantasy to me was like crack. I could not get enough of it for the longest time. I sped read through so many series. So yeah, Butcher, Dresden Files, big part of my life.
So first, Dresden Files is listed for a season 5 topic as an IP to discuss kind of panel. And I will see if I can find a contact for Jim Butcher, and maybe he'll answer, maybe he won't. We don't know. I mean, I've asked lots of people and been told no. I did get a really nice letter from Elon Musk's people because I wanted to talk to him about SpaceX because, respect that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And we were like, JR, we've got like 127 of these emails already. Can you just chop? No more? No sense of adventure, that one.
Speaking of corridors,
like Dufresne, I'll write him twice a month now.
All right, LaVoice. If you could have anyone as
Stabby write him. You should have Stabby write him. He'll come on crying. Just make her stop.
That's why we
and this is not an easy question because I write in 2 different genres, and I've got huge fan sense for people in both. But if I had to pick just one, it'd probably be Simon Hawke. Some of y'all may never even heard of this guy, but he was in the 80s. He wrote a series called the Time Wars series, which was fantastic. Just go find it. It's really cool. He also wrote a series called The Wizard of 4th Street, which was kind of futuristic urban fantasy. It takes place in a future Earth where we've used up all the resources and there's no more oil, there's no more energy, and some guy cutting wood in a forbidden forest for his family in the winter accidentally releases Merlin from his imprisonment in a tree. And Merlin ushers in the thaumaturgic age, and so now the world runs on magic instead of energy sources like fossil fuels. And it's just a really cool concept. And he's done a lot of other stuff, but those are the 2 series that just had me standing in line at the bookstore waiting for the next one to come out. And I would love to chat with him.
Okay. MD?
That's actually a hard question for me because most of the writers that I would love to have gotten a chance to talk to, well, they're kind of deceased. Yeah, unfortunately.
We need a Ouija board.
I mean, yeah, no. Let's not play that. I don't want to know what we catch on that, Alec. I guess nowadays, just because I really respect the guy for what he's done in the world of world building and fighting, with the cancel culture and everything, it's probably blatantly Pardo. I mean, the guy practically built him and Stackpole built the BattleTech universe, and I really respect that. You know what? No, I'm going to change the answer right there. It's a good one, but I just said, you know what, David Weber. Out of all the authors out there that I probably want to get a chance to talk with, David Weber would be fun. I love the Honor Harrington series, and that just sort of clicked into the brain there. And he's the guy that would be game for something like this.
He's been on the podcast before. He came when we talked about the controversy with MarsCon when it changed managements a year or 2 ago. He's been on for a solo interview, I think, season 2. But I know we've talked to him. I was told if we're going to interview him,
David Weber at LibertyCon and blame me Pardo.
I'm sorry, David Weber was saying that. So
that was Bambo. Sorry,
hi, Bambo.
The problem with David Weber is if you want an hour slot, you have to book for like twice or thrice that because the man likes his own voice. And I, as a man who also likes to talk, I can't hate him for it.
I mean, the guy I got to meet at LibertyCon last year, I totally fanboyed out over was Will McCarthy. He writes nanopunk essentially because he's oh god. So sorry, I got multiple answers of stuff.
All right, Jesse.
I don't know if he does have views or if he's who he is as a person, but purely for the craft, Jay Kristoff. Jay Kristoff's characters, man, are just awesome. And that's a huge part of writing for me. Dudes like Gabriel DeLeon, everybody in the Nevernight series, he writes these huge, elaborate, I don't want to call them parody because that cheapens it, but these different versions of world religions that he builds all into his own. And I think this the craft of making the characters in the world would be awesome to hear from him.
Okay. Jana, if you could be on a panel with anybody.
Again, really, really hard one. I'm lucky that I live out west where I do, and I get to go to Superstars of Writing, which is a writing conference that happens every February. And a lot of these guys show up there. So Butcher's there. I'm on a panel with Dave Weber coming up this year, and that's going to be a kick. From there, I think on the podcast, it'd be really fun to have Jonathan Mayberry on, because he is fascinating. He's done everything, and he is just personable as all get out. And I love listening to him because he's got this huge depth of knowledge, but it comes across in such an easy fashion that you go, oh yes, I can learn from you. You're amazing, and I want to read everything that you write. So we'd bring Mayberry on.
Okay. Nick, if we could get anybody that you would want to interview or to have on a panel.
Well, we already scored 1 of 2 when we got Chuck Dixon.
Nice.
So
I figured you said Stan Lee.
Who? Jim Lee.
In Dream World. Jim Lee, Stan Lee. So there's a Lee involved.
No, Jim Lee. Yeah, absolutely. But if we're talking about like, yeah, I don't have $8,000, so we don't have $8,000.
Stan Lee's kind of dead, so.
I mean, this is a dream question. They don't care to be a lot. So, if I could do it, go ahead, Nick.
I'd love to get Chris Claremont on board. Panel
I've met him once.
Yes,
I've met him. So I met him once in St. Louis, and then he remembered me in where were we? We were in Houston. We were at Comic Palooza. He's like, "Hey, Nick," and I'm like, and he's sitting next to Jay Lee, another friend that I made through the con circuit. And he's like, "Hey, Nick, come here." And I'm like, "Oh my God, these two legends know my name." I was totally fangirl.
Nick.
So they bring me up. There's a whole line to meet both of these superstars. And they're like, no, just hey, give Nick some room. Come here. Hey, no, the other side of the table. Come sit with us. And I'm like, holy crap. Nice. Pitched me an idea because Jay was talking to him. He's like, oh, yeah, Nick's a Border Patrol agent. He's like, oh, I have an idea about a Border Patrol story. So here we go. And it was like 45 minutes of him pitching this idea to me. I'm like, dude, I don't have the money to hire you. But I would totally talk. Yeah, he's a great guy. I would love to talk to him more. And he has a disdain for the X-Men movies. Just ask him about it and give up about 2.5 hours, 3 hours of your time.
Nick, did you read Chris Claremont's 3-book series?
Own it.
Yeah, I got
First Flight.
First Flight,
Grounded.
Sundowner, I think was
Sundowner.
Yeah, that whole.
They're pretty good.
They are actually. I like the dedication in First Flight. That would be to Kitty, Charles, Logan, Jean, Oro, and all the others that help pay the bills.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's on my bookshelf. So
if I'm gonna pick, so when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, I did not like my teacher, and she did not like the boys in the class. Although, looking back at it as an adult, we were probably little shits, so we probably had it coming. But she did not like the boys in the class, and so to get back at her, I would read Stephen King novels in class. We definitely not age appropriate in the 3rd grade. I didn't like them. I just did it for the shock value. And when I got in trouble for it, my mom was like, well, if you want to read chapter books, here's one. And so she gave me David Eddings' The Belgariad and then Orson Scott Card's The Homecoming Saga. So I would interview either of those two in a heartbeat. I know Eddings has met his maker. But I think Orson Scott Card is still around. But
yes,
if I could
he's fun.
If I could interview either one of those two,
stop name dropping Jana.
Special God.
Well, I mean,
so many guys come through BYU, and that's where I went to school. Orson Scott Card was one of my professors. Well, he was a fill-in professor between other things.
So is he on your fudge list every Christmas?
No, he's not made the fudge list. It's true.
See, he's not cool if he doesn't make the fudge list, man.
He's not cool enough.
Cool enough. I love editing stuff, but unfortunately, like I said, I'm pretty sure he's passed on. I think his wife too. They used to write together. But so for me, it would definitely be Orson Scott Card of the ones left around. All right, and then lastly, normally we would ask what you guys drink, coffee or tea. But since we know, because you've all been on the show many times, we're going to mix it up a little bit. If you could drink a coffee or a tea or caffeinated beverage with any of your speculative fiction idols, living or deceased, it's dream world, right? You can dream big. Who would you want to drink that, and what would you drink with them? JT, you are muted.
That's a tough one. So many good names come to mind. Probably be interesting to talk to Pierce Anthony.
Ooh, yeah.
One of my favorite book series, huh?
Yeah, he did a couple of them. There's obviously his Xanth series is huge, but then also the Incarnations of Immortality.
Yep, Bio of a Space Tyrant was my favorite. Bio of a Space
Tyrant.
Oh,
Bio of a Space Tyrant. Yep, I read that one too. I think there's 5?
6.
What was the name of the series with the two Phase and Proton? Remember that one? Like one world ran on science, the other one ran on magic, and one guy.
Oh yeah. Crap! I can see the picture of the book cover with the unicorn, and he's fencing it.
Right.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I've read it.
At least I know I'm not crazy enough to have just invented it out of the back side of my brain.
I mean, I don't know that I'd go that far, but
I know that, boy, some of the things that Piers Anthony wrote was just wow for back in the day. I mean, you had the world of tarot. You had also Ghost, Firefly. That one really kind of made me go, okay, that's going to twist my teenage brain pretty darn hard.
I read everything I could get my hands on by him.
Ghost was brilliantly mind twisting.
My intro to him after Bio of a Space Tyrant was someone was kind enough when I was deployed to Saudi for Desert Shield, sent me the entire Xanth series in a box.
Oh wow!
Nice.
So, you know what I was doing every night.
Is that up to 26, 27 now?
I don't know what it is now, but back then I think it was like 10 or 12.
Okay.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot.
Okay. What about you, Pittman? If you could drink a beverage of choice, it could be alcoholic because I know you like bourbons. If you could drink a beverage of your choice, what would it be and who would it be with in the spec-fic world?
That's a tough one. That is a tough one. If we're going dead, I'd have to say whiskey with Harlan Ellison.
Okay.
He was very pivotal in a lot of early sci-fi. He was also one of the genre benders and defiers. Science fiction was all fantasy. I mean, anything went, really. If he could justify it within the story, it made the story, which I love doing. Also, he's just an irascible old man who had like the best friends ever. When Robin Williams just pops by your house just to hang out and get stories from you, that's an intriguing fellow. Also, going the living route, I'm not going to say Jim Butcher because but let's go Hugh Howey, one of my favorite sci-fi authors, especially now that his Silo series has been adapted and they've done such an amazing job. I would love to see how, he's actually approved of that adaptation. I'm like, how did you manage this? How did you get them to actually do justice to what you've done? That kind of stuff. But my favorite of his is like Beacon 23 because it's weird. It's delightfully weird. Lighthouse Keeper in space. Come on.
Okay. LaVoice. You are muted.
the heater was coming on. I was trying to keep the background noise down. I'd probably have to share a nice strong coffee with William Gibson. Because one of the first, after I initially cut my teeth on Heinlein, the next series that I read was Neuromancer, the Sprawl trilogy. And I have never lost my love for cyberpunk. I try to work cyberpunk elements into just about everything I write that's not fantasy, because it had such a huge impact. And because right after, and if Gibson's not available, I'll have an espresso with the guy that invented the term cyberpunk, Bruce Bethke. He and I are friends on Facebook. Yeah, I'm name dropping, Jenna. Deal with it. And he's just a super cool dude. He really didn't write a whole lot after that, but he runs like a zine called Amazing Stories, and it's really cool stuff, keeping that speculative fiction short story spirit alive. But he's a super cool guy. And if you haven't read his book, Head Crash, Roadkill on the Information Superhighway, find a copy and read it. It's outstanding.
Okay. Boncher?
First off, coffee. Keep me awake. Keep the conversation going longer. Well, William Gibson was a heck of an answer. Got to go with something a little different than that.
It's not a contest, dude.
Yes, it is. I would have to say, you know what? Yeah, I'd go this way. I'd like to sit down with Mike Pondsmith, of all people, for somebody still living, because, I mean, you talk cyberpunk, nobody did more for the genre of cyberpunk outside of William Gibson, of course, and director Blade Runner. Why am I blanking? Yeah. Why can't I think of his name? Ridley Scott. Other than those two, really kind of setting up.
Phil K. Dick wrote the original story.
Well, I've read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and to be honest, I consider it inferior to Blade Runner the movie. I think David Fancher did far better with the property and the idea, but he flipped it the same way that Kubrick flipped The Shining a bit on Stephen King, much to his anger. But there's so many things in there. The thing with Phil K. Dick is he's great with the concepts, but I don't like his execution most times. So, I mean, give credit where credit is due, but I would have to go, like I said, with Mike Pondsmith, because the game Cyberpunk, the RPG, really, you take a look at it, it was the D&D for Cyberpunk, and like D&D has infected all of fantasy. They don't want Tolkien anymore. They want the D&D version of Tolkien. That's what it seems to be, and I'm just saying, when it comes to the Vox Populi, that's of gamers, they think in terms of D&D nowadays, not Tolkien or anything like that. But Pondsmith kind of did the same with Cyberpunk and really spread it.
Okay. Jesse, you are muted.
So we're kind of keeping the living in the dead format. Dead is definitely Robert E. Howard. Okay. I'd love to buy the man a beer and sit down with him and just get an idea for where all of that came from. Extremely influential with Conan in my life, in my thought process, and in my writing. And so that would be a big one for me. Living gets a lot more difficult. Jim Butcher would probably be high on the list, but we've already given that answer. Larry Correia would be another one. I tell people a lot of times I try to do for martial arts what Larry did for guns and gun guys as far as writing is concerned, writing something that the martial arts guys can really sink their teeth into. So that would be another cool one too. I've been blessed to meet him in brief at cons and stuff like that, but getting to sit down and have a full conversation would be awesome.
Okay. Jana?
I would have to go with Anne McCaffrey. that just she is the grand dame of science fiction and fantasy in so many ways. And when I was going to BYU, we actually invited her to Life, the Universe, and Everything, the conference out there. And she was just the nicest little thing on the phone, because she said, I'd love to, but if I come to the altitude up there, I'll die. And she meant it. She had such bad allergies and such problems with altitude sickness that going from Ireland to Utah was just absolutely not possible. So she gave us an interview over the phone, but she's like, nope, there's certain traveling that I can't do. And I would love to just sit down and talk to her, because she did so much that was very, very influential for how we look at fantasy, how we look at science fantasy, that crossover and everything that she did with Pern, the way that we think about dragon riders. Even though she wasn't the first to do it by any stretch, she popularized it in such a way that when a lot of people think about what dragon riders should be now, they go back to Pern. And that's kind of where they go first before going back to, anything older than that. So I would love to have a sit down with that lady.
Nice. Nick, are you going to wow me with your list?
What's the question?
Who would you like to have a coffee, tea, or beverage of your choice with?
Ernest Hemingway.
Okay. I don't know is he really speculative? I mean, he's definitely an author.
He's an author.
Mm-hmm. I guess
he scared the shit out of me as a child, or as a young teenager, whatever. Stephen King, because he's weird. So is his kid. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm. This is going to sound cheesy, because I'm amongst some of my favorite authors here in this panel right now, and we may not be sharing a drink physically together, but I'm definitely having a drink with y'all. So, especially you, Pittman. Bourbon's on me.
So if I'm going to pick, if we're going to keep the living and the dead format, because I did give you choice and you gave me both, all of you, which is awesome. If we're going with people that are no longer on the land of the living, definitely J.R.R. Tolkien and Anne McCaffrey, because they shaped my childhood. I had lots of fun with Pern and arguing with family about whether it was sci-fi or fantasy. I have bought that series at least 4 or 5 times because I read through them so much that the paper falls apart. So that's definitely up there. I was definitely touched by some of the D&D stuff, so I'll say James Ward, because we were planning on meeting together in person before he passed. Although that's probably a little more selfish. That's like, of course, my friend. The fact that he qualifies for the list for me is just incidental. And then if we're looking at people that are still with us, I don't know. That's hard because I read a lot of mil sci-fi, and to get that means in military fantasy. To get that generally means you read indie, because trad pub tends not to think it's the margins aren't there for their overhead. Because you got to remember, traditional publishing has to pay for their union stuff, the New York overhead, the New York printing costs, and it means that their profit margin, return on investment, that requires a lot more unit sales than we have to as indie. And that's just raw math. I'm not hating on them for not writing it or not publishing it if they can't make money on it. But because of that, I've been to a few of the author type conventions where I've met all the people I've read, which is kind of cool. And sometimes when I get new books for the kids, we'll go through the Barnes and Nobles and I'll go through the spec fic section. I'm like, I've met them. So I've kind of, as far as the living, I've kind of mostly done it. So if we want to go with someone I haven't met in person, officially, Nick, you and I owe you a drink. There we go.
Yes, sir.
I don't think radio chatter counts.
No, we'll eventually link up and we'll close the bar down.
Absolutely. We were supposed to do that right before COVID because you were going to come out for Dragon Con and I was going to drive the 16 hours south to meet you. But
global pandemic and all kind of screwed everything up.
So we were going to try to do the whole postman, not the weather will stop us. What's that? Not rain, sleet, whatever. I don't know. I watched the postman.
Rain, nor sleet, nor dead of night.
Yeah.
They'll keep us from our appointed rounds.
Yeah, but apparently that does not work when certain viruses float around the world. So we were out of luck.
Certain colds, yeah.
Yeah, certain colds. All right, and so obviously we did mention that the Deadly Flames Dragons in Combat Anthology is sponsoring this episode. Link will be in the show note. I will just insert the soundbite for those that are on the podcast only. But rather than read it in, we're just going to keep talking. We've talked about it before, Jesse and I. We will try to get some of those authors on to do individual interviews about their short stories, which could be fun. But with that, we've talked about, like, broadly, these questions got us talking about the things we liked about speculative fiction, about, you know, sort of as the genre. What do you think makes it such an enduring genre for people to read? I mean, it's second. I mean, obviously the only thing that trumps it is romance novels. And that's part of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like love and affection. But outside of that, you know, as far as what follows, it's spec fic. So why do you think it's so popular and resonates so much with people? And anybody can jump in when they want to.
It is part of the human condition to wonder and to dream. When you go to sleep at night, every night, whether you remember it or not, your brain is processing everything that you have been through and creating some kind of strange, fantastical world. And what that leads to is that when people look up at the stars, when they look at the things they don't understand, they have to wonder for the answer. It's a curiosity killed the cat kind of thing. And the realm of speculative fiction drives us to those answers. There's tons of things that were like science fiction, cyberpunk view kind of things, 50 years ago that we do now, that we have, that somebody said, you know what, I'm gonna figure out how that works, and they did so. But it all started as just a dream, and I think that that's enduring in the human spirit and always will be.
Okay. I think people are trying to answer the question of, you know, what could be. We're always looking for that answer, so we read speculative fiction to see if we can kind of scratch that itch, find that answer.
My sister
never truly gets answered.
Yeah, my sister had a bumper sticker on her car, which people remember bumper stickers. They grew up to be memes, but this said, "People see things and ask why. See things that are and ask why. I see things that are not and ask why not." And I think, yeah, to both of your points, I think the bottom line on all speculative fiction, even the dystopian kind, is hope. Because, okay, you project a story ahead however many hundreds of thousands of years, and look, humanity's still kicking it out among the stars, hiding in the caves, but we're still there, and we're going to kick your butt if you try to take us down. I just think there's something, that spark of, no, I will not go quietly into that good night, about the human spirit, and speculative fiction addresses it like almost no other genre. It doesn't matter how dark it gets, you know, there's always a dawn.
Well, and it's often the rise of the little guy, especially in Western spec fic, because some of the Eastern stuff and some of the other gets a lot darker and doesn't have those white hats and those happily ever afters that we like, that idea that you're going to come out in the end. But a lot of it does. A lot of it is that it's noble to sacrifice, that it's going to turn out okay, that the little guy is the one that's going to make a difference. And we all live sometimes in such mundane lives that we're looking for that escapism. We're looking for that story that says, yes, the casual. This is why lit RPG, I think, is really big right now. It's the stories of, yes, the doughy office worker gets sucked into a fantasy realm where he gets to be awesome. And sometimes we all want to be awesome well beyond the grind of the 9 to 5, the dishes, the laundry, the diapers, the everything else. And when you read speculative fiction, when you go into those worlds, for a while you get to be there and you get to be part of the awesome. And so it's that escape, and it's a good place for our imaginations to go and to reboot. And we dream about things that become our realities. Because you look at Star Trek in the 1960s, and it's like, he's got this little walkie-talkie thing. He can talk to a spaceship with it. And I'm like, I carry it in my pocket all the time. Just so many of the things that science fiction came up with that are now our science reality, that inspired people to be able to do the things that, I mean, literally save lives. And isn't that awesome that it started as a thought that somebody said, I wonder if we could. And, you know, when my doctors were working on me doing cancer treatments, she used a robot. And that robot gave me 5 teeny tiny little scars and pulled the cancer out, no problem. And years ago, my diagnosis would have been a deadly diagnosis. But science fiction helps to inspire people who built the robot that a wonderful doctor used to save my life. How cool is that? So it's cool factor.
Speculative fiction. Go ahead.
When you talk about inspiration, I mean, there's the famous Miguel. He did the math. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's a Mexican physicist who did the math because he was so intrigued by Star Trek that he did the math for the warp drive to make it possible mathematically. Now, obviously, the problem with it is the power output, because you would use more energy to make warp possible than the sun will generate in its lifetime. But the math is it's in theory the numbers could work, and that was because someone watched speculative fiction and said, I wonder if that's possible. We did it on the Sci-Fi Shenanigans many years ago. We talked about some of the X prizes that they did, and they actually had people, one of the years they had to build the tricorder from Star Trek, the original series. And they ended up making a little portable thing, and you enter a few base stats, and it gives you the most probable diagnoses. Obviously, it's limited, algorithmic programming, but it was inspired by a TV show, which I'm sure, when they were writing that was science was just magic by another name at that point, because it was so futuristic to what they had available. Mm-hmm. So I do think speculative fiction is the literature of what's possible, not hampered by our reality.
Then there were the books that had such high hopes for us. It's the year 2023. Humanity has spread across the stars. And I'm like,
all speculative fiction ultimately turns into a time capsule for the dreams of its era.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah. So, James, you've been silent on this one.
Well, everybody's making excellent points. I agree that it is a dash of escapism. I really like the fact that it really ignites the imagination and sets it on fire, lets people dream beyond the ordinary. But one thing that hasn't been covered, I don't think, is it allows people a space to really work out a lot of the things they can't come to grips with in reality. Whether it be political intrigue, technological advancements, impacts on society, the what ifs of post-apocalypticism, that kind of stuff. It lets people explore a lot of things in a environment conducive to figuring crap out, as opposed to being like beat down, broken realism. It's like, okay, well, what if we did this? That's hence speculative. That's the core of it, is we're going to sit here and speculate. We're going to let our imagination run wild, and we're going to see if, can be the downfall. How's it going to play out in myriad ways? And you've got thousands and tens of thousands of authors, working the problems and what resonates with the most people, and seeing if we can, maybe impact their culture a little bit. Like, I know I've been deeply impacted by a lot of the writers I've read. Butcher changed the course of my life, for lack of a better. And many other authors have had like a huge impact. It's just whereas like literary fiction is just kind of a reflection of reality, speculative fiction is a reflection of our hope.
Yeah, I think part of it is the humans were not meant to live in the bubble that we do, that modernity wraps around us, all the bubble wrap, where you've got, the cubicle life. It goes contrary to our biology, which is why some of the health problems some people have. So I think speculative fiction, these adventure stories, allows you to tap into some of the primal needs, the primal urges, in a way that's safe in modernity for a lot of people. That's why the action is more actiony in the novels, because it's wish fulfillment. It's feeding that desire to be somebody in a world that's sort of like sit down, shut up, and clock in. But that's just my opinion. Anybody else want to weigh in before we ask the last question of the evening?
No, I think you definitely hit there a big part of the issue of modern life, and I would literally blame why we see an increase in mental illness with this, is that people are kind of bored and they don't have struggles, and struggles build character, and struggles are necessary. It's biologically ingrained into our being to have to fight for certain things. And we don't really do that anymore. And there's some blessings there, but there's also the curse of those instincts still exist. We haven't evolved beyond them. And I think spec fic definitely scratches that itch, especially in more visual or modern formats.
Right, because, I mean, as a species, we live for narrative. It doesn't matter what we're involved in, what field of endeavor, what industry. When we relate one-on-one and even in small groups, we do so through narrative. We tell stories, even if it's something that actually happened. We tell a story and we follow the narrative format of beginning, middle, and end, and we make a point. And I think speculative fiction, while it has to follow those same guidelines, is also got that higher calling, like we've all been, putting different pieces of that puzzle together with our answers. And it does help us transcend mundanity to a degree, to punctuate the dreariness, as it were.
And it's also therapeutic in a way. Like there's a reason the VA has writing as therapy classes, because it allows you to process things in a way that's safe. And that's why I didn't write fantasy at first, because that's a lot closer and more visceral. Whereas, plasma, it cauterizes, it can be somewhat more sanitary in theory until you think more deeply about it. But I think as a reader, you get some of that too. And you can kind of get that I'm not alone when you read some of these, people that lived horrific experiences and then turned it into, monetize their pain, if it were. And then, as the reader, you can kind of pick up on that. I don't know, the essence that they know what they've experienced it too. And it gives you, and sometimes they'll fool you if they're a good enough writer. Right. But you can kind of relate to it. So, all right. So our last question of the evening is I want to ask you to pick the one book you think that moved you the most or impacted you the most or just stuck with you. And I'm going to go first so you have time to think about it. For me, it would be The Misenchanted Sword by Lawrence Watt Evans, not Watts Evans. It came out in like 85. I read it in the late 80s. The basic plot is this guy got given a sword when he was adventuring. He had this one flaw. You have to draw blood with it and kill once you unsheath it, which is great when you're in the army. Not so great when you're just, trying to scare off the ruffians. But now the ruffians can't live because I have to kill them. And how he ends up trying to retire but can't because the sword just wants to kill. And that just stuck with me. And so when I read that in the 80s, so I was still in elementary school, I decided I was going to write a story, and I tried to write one inspired by that. I got like 4 pages of intro. I'm sure it was just literary genius. And then I got bored and I wrote a paragraph to end the story. But if my mom has that, I will instruct her to burn it upon my death. That story, even though I couldn't remember the name for years, but it stuck with me. Luckily, the one of the good uses of AI that's like in Google or Bing is if you give it, it can let the AI help you find answers that you missed. So we've talked about it in previous episodes, like the I Rode with Hannibal story that I was trying to find. Google AI found it because I gave it enough details in ways that the librarian couldn't. So for me, it was that one story, even when I couldn't remember its name. But who else wants to jump in if you've got that one story that spoke to you?
It doesn't have to be. That's a good one. Does it have to be like a chapter book? I mean,
no, whatever book you want. It's a dealer's choice. It doesn't even have to be spec fic if you don't want it to be.
It's kind of spec fic. It's a 4-issue limited series comic from the 80s. I've read it over and over and over. I've worn out 2 trade paperbacks, and it is the Chris Claremont, Frank Miller Wolverine 4-issue limited series.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Where they took a character who showed up once in a while to beat up the Hulk and was an annoying little berserker and turned him into a failed Ronin, a man who couldn't decide if he was a beast or a man, and he confronted himself and everything else. If you haven't read it, dude, find it and read it. It is so good. So good. Oh man, I get chills thinking about the arc that Logan had through that whole series. And it changed the way I saw heroes. Because up until then, my hero had always been Green Lantern. Still is. I mean, you guys have seen my stuff in my office before it flooded. Green Lantern stuff everywhere. But I think my hero worship took a shift when I read that story. And I started looking at heroes who were fallible, heroes who had failings and fought to rise above them, as well as fighting the bad guys, and still managed to come out on top. And it was kind of life-changing, honestly.
Yeah, it was one of the few comics that I read that did Watchmen before Watchmen. The fallible, flawed hero. And yeah, that's right up there. That's like top 10 of things that I've read that completely changed my life.
JT, you had a question for Michael about that series?
Yeah, was that the one that had the oil painting covers? Or am I thinking of a different book series?
There may have been one, but this is the story of Logan has a girlfriend who's the daughter of Clan Yashida in Tokyo, and he gets a letter from her saying she doesn't want to see him anymore, she can't talk to him anymore, and that's bullcrap. And so he goes to Tokyo to find out why, finds out she's been married off to a local Yakuza lord to honor a debt from her father, who showed back up. He was supposed to be dead. And so Logan basically takes on the Yakuza, the Japanese underworld. And it's outstanding.
Silver Samurai made an appearance, I think.
Silver Samurai, Yukio, the assassin.
Yukio, yeah.
Before she became Lady Deathstrike.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I had one 4-book series back in the 80s. I think Logan was like squatted down holding a little mini crossbow on it on one of the covers.
That's issue number 4. That's the cover from issue number 4, where he storms the Clan Yashida household. Takes on the Hand. That was the introduction of the Hand, by the way, in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then they became popular in Daredevil and Elektra and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ninja Turtles.
Well, they came up with the foot as a response to that. Yes.
I'm just saying that was a great inspiration for Ninja Turtles.
Eastman and Laird, God bless them.
Don't get them together with the Mouth Clan, or they'll end up all disease. It's a big mess.
Yeah, you get foot and mouth disease. It's gross. Disease. Foot, hand, and mouth.
Only you, Fain. Only you would come up with that. That's outstanding.
We're definitely related.
Is that in that weird Southern cousin way, or? Never mind.
What in the Sweet Home Alabama are you talking about, Michael?
My mother's maiden name is Fain.
Oh,
so,
dear.
There's probably
boy,
a little connection there.
All right,
my father in Iraq was also named Fain.
This issue brought to you by 23andMe. Okay.
Hey, don't feel so bad. Don't feel so bad. When I go around with Bambo, it seems like she's related to half the state part of Southern West Virginia around here. But then again, they're the ones that say 3.5 million people, 4 last names. West Virginia, it's all relative. Got Governor Jim Justice all sorts of bent out of shape until basically everybody said, "Shut up, it's true."
So I don't know, like the whole 23andMe thing. Like I've read too many crime novels. I'm like, you could get their DNA this way and frame them for murder.
Yes.
So I will never submit mine because I just know someone. I mean, the government has it already. Obviously, I was in the Army, but I just keep thinking of these DNA testing sites, and I'm like, this is how you get in jail for a crime you didn't commit. So, all right. Does anyone
think they created so many?
Does anyone else have any books that you think like really just kind of moved you, that stick with you?
I'm going to say for comic book, you talked about Miller and Claremont with Wolverine. For me, it was Miller and Mazzucchelli with Born Again. For those, that is probably for me the best written miniseries, as it was inside the Daredevil comic, that Marvel ever put out, and that's some pretty tall water as far as I'm concerned. Wolverine is a great, even though I've never,
Now when you're talking about my boy Daredevil,
he was probably 4th on my list. I was an Exophile. I was a serious exophile for Claremont's run, but once Jim Lee and Will Sportasio took over plotting duties because they told the editorial staff they aren't going to draw what this stupid story is, I was pretty much out. Issue 403 of Uncanny X-Men was pretty much my last comic book I bought of what was publishing. And I still look back every now and again and go, I really wish I could get back into this, but still doing stuff, stupid stuff. Sorry. I'm a frustrated comic book collector.
You should buy Apogee Comics, man.
Jana.
There we go.
We're going to move on, talk about books.
Oh, no. I got to say my book series. That was the biggest influence on me. Stainless Steel Rat, Harry Harrison. That whole series. I wanted to be Slippery Jim DeGriz. I seriously did my whole teen years. So, sorry, I had to get the comic book thing in.
Comic books count. I just didn't want us to go on too many tangents because
no.
Nick is going to get stabbed if we don't let him eat. So if you want to talk about books, though, I just remembered the Harry Turtledove's Guns of the South also, because the idea of time travel, like in this one, they went back in time and gave the Confederates AK-47s. But that thinking got me to wonder what would happen if I could just sort of be outside of New Jersey or Trenton or New York when the British landed with my, one little Browning submachine gun or, Mama Deuce. Like, we could have won the war in one fight. Like, they just would have never got on the shore. The ship would have sunk because we could have taken that out too. Like, Nick and I could have ended the war with modern weaponry.
The rebels have sorcery.
I would like to write that someday, but the problem with historical fiction is the amount of research you would have to do can get cumbersome.
It's a lot.
If Time Cop can do it, we can do it.
But the people that read like Harry Turtledove type stuff are very pedantic about like, no. They only had 2 buttons on that coat. Not 3, sir. Not 3. Yep. I mean, they're like horse people or gun people. History people are the same.
I have a friend who used to do reenactments, Civil War reenactments, and he's a carpenter by trade. And he made an exact reproduction of Grant's camp chair and sold a lot of them. But he was just so annoyed with this certain subset of guys that would attend these events, and he called them Farbies. And that's shorthand for far be it from me to be authentic. So you'd have this guy in complete Union Civil War kit, but he's walking around wearing a pair of Zeiss shooting glasses. It's stuff like that. Just drove him absolutely nuts.
Takes me right out of it.
So, Jana, what was the one, if you could pick just one book that you think moved you?
So one of the earliest speculative fictions that I remember reading is The Ash Staff by Paul R. Fisher. It was from early 70s, 60s, somewhere around there. I'd have to look up the exact date. But I loved that. I love the entire series because it put the hero in the situation of he had to make the choice between what was most important, the staff or the sword. So he had the intelligence sword and he had the adventure and everything else. But before his father figure, who has adopted all of these orphans who come together and they become your adventuring party for the next 3 books. But before that father figure dies, he gives him the staff, and the staff is the responsibility to look over his brothers and sisters and to take care of the people around him. And the sword is the call to adventure, to go and to do selfish things. And the whole series is about him having to marry those 2 ideas as to which is most important, the staff or the sword. It wasn't an either or. It was how do you bring those things together to make a better world. And that was really, really impactful and has impacted a lot of what I've read, a lot of what I write, because it is that idea that you're not just one thing. You've got both of those things going on. And when it comes together that you become an actual hero, that you actually fulfill what it is that's been asked of the world.
All right. Jesse and JT, I know JT, you said you had one, and then we're going to ask Jesse for his before we wrap.
All right. So I think I was 13 or 14 when I read this, but it was the Deathland series. The first book is called Pilgrimage to Hell.
Oh, I like the name.
And it's based off of like a 1980s World War III post-apocalyptic jump forward 100 years. After basically the entire world is destroyed. And what's nice about this is that after the first 10 books or so, the author got it down to a small group. I think it was 5 or 6. And every book is a story into itself. And it turned into kind of a serial where each new book is a new story. Sometimes there's two-parters, but the main idea was that how you find them at the beginning of the book is how they will be left at the end of the book. And that enabled the story to go on. I think it's got 125 novels in the series now, and it's continuing more.
Damn.
There's been, I think, 4 or 5 writers on it. Mark Ellis was one of them. Lawrence James was the original author. He wrote under the name James Axler.
Okay. And then as we bring this to a close, James, you said you had one more you wanted to throw out at us.
Well, the influential ones, I hadn't put mine in there yet, but it was Neverwhere. It kind of opened my eyes to the whole speculative urban like fantasy, and it's what led me to Butcher. So, I read Neverwhere, standalone, all you get, go looking for something else, and oh, hey, here's like, I think at the time it was 6 books in the Dresden Files, which I immediately consumed, which led to my current career, my previous relationships, because I played an RPG about it, and various other things. It just Neverwhere kicked it all off. My love of good words and the whole speculative side of modernity.
All right. And this is normally we would get Jesse to weigh in the last one, but he was feeling ill. So as far as finding him on the interwebs, his contact information will be in the show notes. Speaking of show notes, JT, how can listeners and viewers find you as we wrap this up?
Across most of the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, just as JT Arralle. I also have my website, jtarralle.com, though that gets neglected like most author websites do.
Okay. James, how can we find you in Wild Wild Interwebs?
The equally neglected halfacrepond.com. I was sick most of December, so I haven't updated it in a while. I've got a bunch of new events coming out starting next weekend. So check there. And on the socials, JE Pittman Writes on the Facebooks and j.e.pittman on just about everywhere else.
Nice. Michael LaVoice, how might we find you if we want to stalk you?
Ooh. Well, I live in Tennessee. You can find me at michaellavoice.com. That's my also neglected website, where you can actually find links to appearances that I've made on this very podcast. Also, you can find me on Facebook as that Michael LaVoice or just my regular Facebook page. I'll answer to either one. Twitter/X is also that Michael LaVoice, as well as Instagram, because turns out there's a bunch of us. So, yeah, or you can just shoot me a DM and I'll probably respond. It may be an ugly emoji, but I'll respond. Oh,
freaking Sandy. All right, Jana, how might we find you on the Wild Wild Interwebs?
You can find me over at Opal Kingdom Press. Not quite as neglected, but in need of an update. That's happening somewhere the next couple of days here. You can also find me under Jana S Brown or Jena Rey on pretty much all the places. I'm around hither, thither, and even yon. Not hard to find.
All righty. And finally, we've got Mr. M.D. Boncher.
Anyway, the beating shall continue until my morale improves. That said, you can find me on the link that I have right below my ugly mug right here at www.resonantmedia.art, and that is my neglected webpage. I am a chatty Cathy, generally found over on several Discords like Three Ravens, as well as Facebook. You can find me there. You can find me on Substack under Resonant Point. You can find my music on Bandcamp under Resonant One. So there's a theme. Yeah, but just like LaVoice, send a message. We'll chat if it's worth it. I'm so egotistical.
All right. So this is the part of the interview dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind. On the reviewing platforms, your reviews do help the right readers find the right books. It really does matter, especially if, like me, you read a lot of indie works. It really does help. The algorithms say, I know they're not backed by the big five or whatever's left of them. I'm not even sure anymore. But, I know they're not backed by those guys, but they're still pretty cool. Let me recommend them. So be sure to leave a review. It really does matter. Just remember, generally speaking, my rule of thumb is I'm not talking to the author. I am talking to the other readers who might read what I read. Because, some authors never read the reviews. They're important to the algorithm. They're important to help other readers, but sometimes the mean comments hurt our feelings.
I'm a size 5 review, 5-star.
So you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, our Spotify website, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only. Yes, I'm looking at you, LaVoice. I see what you've been sending. And save all the shenanigans from Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. Sadly, LaVoice was not brave enough to send those to Stabby, so I had to.
I'm not stupid.
Those first images.
I look stupid, but I ain't stupid.
It's got me fooled.
If you want to support the show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I will keep my co-host duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till the Java flows out their ears and turns their hair brown. So speaking of, if you want to support the show, use the link in the show notes. Podcast Grunts is the discount code. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. Right now, that's mostly Stabby and I buying our own supply, so we're very bad drug dealers. We'll learn eventually. But if you want to join the shenanigans, help keep the lights on, every penny helps, and we greatly appreciate it. And if you do give a donation, Nick and I have the rule, and we followed through so far on all of them. We will let you pick an episode topic, and we will make it happen. That's where Beastmaster, which will come out later this season, comes from, and the Sword and Sorcery panel were both recommended by people that threw a couple shekels to keep the lights on. So we appreciate all of you. It really does make a difference. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom, like the big episode 500. And when we hit the 1000th episode, I expect all of you smiling cats to be back for it. I mean, that only is another 5 more years based on the current trajectory, or 4.5.
I can handle that.
I think we'll all still be around.
Yeah.
Maybe
unless
not
the apocalypse.
If Nick keeps making Stabby mad, there might not be any blood left to revive him. But everyone else, I'm sure, will be fine.
That's why I've been hitting the stationary bite. Stab me all you want. The blood's going to keep pumping.
I actually
otherwise there's always necromancy.
Yeah, I was going to go with the necromancy joke, but all right. And with that, we are going to end the button. Hit it. Wait for it.